And welcome to Hannity. The alt-left propaganda media is still trying to recover from President Trump's historic beatdown yesterday, and that is tonight's opening monologue. All right, so snowflake anchors and reporters, they're whining, complaining about President Trump daring to call them out yesterday. Now, let's run through some of the examples. Over at NBC, Chuck Todd was so incensed by the president's press conference, he tweeted, quote, "This is not a laughing matter. I'm sorry. Delegitimizing the press is un-American." No, you did it to yourself, Chuck. Now, the president is defending himself from what is an out-of-control media bias, and somehow he's calling that un-American? Now, of course, Chuck wasn't done there. He also compared President Trump to Richard Nixon. Let's watch this.
A lot of this press conference had to do with the president airing grievances about the press. And we got to remember what this is. It's a political tactic. It's one that is a familiar one, but he is going at it in a way we haven't seen a president do since Nixon in those early 70s.
Oh, really, Chuck Todd? He's probably upset because he's one of the biggest purveyors of all this fake news. Now, it wasn't that long ago when he falsely claimed that the president's temporary travel ban, including a religious test. That's a lie, Chuck. That's fake news. Remember this.
President Trump suspended the U.S. refugee program for 120 days, closed the borders on passport holders from 7 Muslim-majority countries for 3 months, and barred Syrian refugees indefinitely. And Mr. Trump established a religious test for refugees from those Muslim countries, allowing an exception for Christians and others from minority religions.
Then there's Brian Williams over at NBC. Now, let's take a look at the kind of fake news that was said in response to a comment that a guest made on his show. Watch this.
That is the most basic function of a free press in our society, and the president's response to that was to have a meltdown and to accuse us all of purveying fake news, when in fact his own actions, which were to fire General Flynn, proved that news was spot on. It was 100% accurate.
Because when you reduce the media enough in prestige, when they do report facts, those facts are diminished.
All right, Brian, speaking of reducing the prestige of the all-important, all-arrogant media, you may remember you lied repeatedly. Remember the helicopter that you were supposedly flying in Iraq and it was coming under attack? Or remember you reported and talked about seeing a dead body floating past your hotel after Hurricane Katrina? By the way, a location, there was no water and no dead body. But the anchors over at NBC News, they're not alone. CBS News also could not resist lashing out at the president. Watch this.
Today, we learned the length of the president's fuse, 28 days. After 4 weeks of being blocked by courts, challenged by Congress, and held to account by the public, President Trump called a hasty news conference and went on offense with the familiar tools that built his career: bluster, bravado, exaggeration, and a few loose facts.
Wouldn't Pravda be so proud? And ABC News, they got in on the Trump-hating action also. Why would they miss out?
That was the most amazing press conference by a president I have ever seen, and I've been watching it since the mid-'70s. And I don't mean amazing and great. I mean amazing and spectacular insight into Donald Trump and his state of mind today. To me, when you have presidents take office, many of them are empowered and get bigger. You think you have a president in that press conference that looked smaller and actually more insecure in his position.
All right, that leaves us now with CNN, the Clinton News Network. Their consistently biased Trump-bashing coverage. Now, that drew the attention of the president at yesterday's presser. And sure enough, the commander-in-chief, he let him have it. And I loved every minute of it. Take a look.
I'm not okay when it is fake. I mean, I watch CNN. It's so much anger and hatred and just the hatred. I don't watch it anymore because it's very good. He's saying, no, it's okay, Jim. It's okay, Jim. You'll have your chance.
If I may follow up on some of the questions that have taken place so far here, sir.
Well, not too much microphone. You do have other people. You do have other people, and your ratings aren't as good as some of the other people that are waiting. You look at your show that goes on at 10 o'clock in the evening. You just take a look at that show. That is a constant hit. The panel is almost always exclusive anti-Trump. The good news is he doesn't have good ratings. Should I let him have a little bit more? Sit down. Sit down.
Just
We'll
because
get it.
of the attack of fake news and attacking our network, I just want to ask you, sir.
I'm changing it from fake news, though.
Doesn't that undermine?
Very fake news.
I know, but aren't you?
Not only was he presidential, not only was he being honest, but he was being funny. And as you can imagine, CNN, the Clinton News Network, is not happy about getting called out. Here's how Jake Tapper responded immediately after.
Jake, I think all of us were pretty much stunned by the course of this hour and 15-minute appearance.
Look, everybody at home just needs to ask themselves, how would you react if that were your boss coming in and giving a speech to the employees where you work? How would you react if that was somebody in your family that you were trying to have a conversation with? President Trump, if you're watching, you're the president. You legitimately won the presidency. Now get to work and stop whining about it.
The sting in any rebuke is the truth. They're having a hard time accepting the truth that they're abusively biased. Wasn't that the network that fed questions to Hillary Clinton? Anyway, then they colluded, of course, with that campaign. President Trump has not stopped working, and that's not all. CNN decided it was appropriate to actually mock the president by sending out a tweet with a video that reads, quote, "Turn your sound up and watch President Trump conduct an amazing symphony press conference." Here's the video. Oh, that's what we get from a real news network? By the way, Jake Tapper, Jim Acosta, you want to defend that as news? Or is that Saturday Night Live? Anyway, one of many reasons why the president keeps calling CNN fake news. Now, more importantly, here's what this all means. Everything you just saw amounts to a giant, huge temper tantrum from a bunch of overpaid, spoiled brats, so-called journalists who finally got called out for their bad behavior. So all the members of the media, they can be mad all they want. It doesn't change the fact how biased, how lazy they are, and how abusive they've been towards the 45th president. And in case they don't remember, here are some more examples.
This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part. And that's the part where the pain comes.
You're not having a terrible, terrible dream. Also, you're not dead and you haven't gone to hell. This is your life now. This is our election now. This is us. This is our country. It's real.
Miller also lying this weekend about the 3 million votes.
There was no BS to it tonight. He obviously believes everything he said today. The way he said it was so manic.
Pretty unbelievable. And by the way, the New York Times, they're just as bad as CNN. They had to reprimand a reporter this week for making a vile comment about the First Lady, Melania Trump. They also quoted a fake Michael Flynn Twitter account. And the so-called paper of record, they tweeted an image of a late-night show video that had Stephen Miller, who works for the president's head on a stick. You know what? We're all sick of it. A brand new Fox News poll shows that compared to President Obama, 68% of registered voters say the media has been a lot tougher on President Trump. Now, we've also shown you repeatedly on this show how the alt-left propaganda media misrepresents the president and his policies. So, you know what, yesterday? The president drew a line in the sand. He called them out, and he said enough is enough, and he did it in a very even, measured tone. And you can guarantee that if the media gets out of line again, I expect the president to hit him back again. Why shouldn't he? The truth matters, and the people that are suffering from an information crisis are you, the American people. Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Herman Cain. Herman, I'll be honest, I loved every minute of it. I thought his tone was measured. He wasn't showing anger. He showed a lot of humor, but he also told a lot of truth, and they can't seem to handle any criticism. They're what they're accusing him of.
They can't. The pain of being thrown under the bus is very painful, and that's what they're reacting to. Sean, psychologists have described the first 3 stages of grief as denial, anger, and acceptance. But the liberal media and the Democrats have inserted what I call phase 2.5. It's called destroy. They want to destroy Donald Trump and his administration at all costs. So they are telling the 50% of the people who watch any news at all of these misconceptions about what he said and what he has done. The other 50%, thank goodness they are watching your program, listen to me and others who are dissecting this and telling them the truth. They can't handle the truth, and that's why they're still having this temper tantrum that you described.
You know, look at all the examples I use. Look at the New York Times in 1 week, all the things that they got wrong. I'm going to put up on the side of the screen. I won't read it myself, but we'll also split screen it for you. This is the Federalist providing a list of fake news stories that reporters have run. And the other side of it is, look at how they were exposed in WikiLeaks. All of these networks, Herman, all of them exposed as openly colluding with the Clinton campaign. How do they not reconcile that?
They are in denial and anger and in destroy mode, and they can't see it. The irony of it is they are only destroying themselves. More and more people, like some of the people that you probably talked to on your shows, people that called into my show, more and more people are seeing this hypocrisy, and they're not buying it. The American people are not stupid, but the liberal media still doesn't get it. They are still in destroy mode, and it's not working.
It's also the stories that they don't run. In our next segment, we've got a very important story that we're covering tonight, and it's about the leaking from our intelligence community, Signet Communications, that, you know, we have a law that's called the Espionage Act. If they are spying our security agencies, in this case on a Russian ambassador, and they realize he's talking to an American, they're supposed to minimize the listening and minimize the recording of the American. Not only did they not do that and follow the law, which is a felony, but then they leaked this. They're not covering 18 U.S. Code 793, the Espionage Act, and how dangerous this is, because they didn't have a warrant to tap into the phone conversation of General Flynn. This was illegal. This is a crime, and if they can do this to him, they can do this to anybody. That is the big story here. They don't even want to touch it. Why?
They don't want to touch it because they are used to 8 years of an administration that they supported, of only selectively covering selective laws that were enforced. Donald Trump and his administration are doing something that the previous administration didn't do: enforcing the laws. The law is the law, and he is saying, and rightly so, which is why so many people are positively responding to him, enforce the laws that are on the books.
Well, they better get used to it and learn 18 U.S.C. 793.
Yes.
Because my prediction is the people that keep leaking within the intelligence community are going to be arrested, and they're going to be brought to justice, and they probably will go to jail. One last question. You know, we've had in 30 days shock and awe. The media, oh, the chaos, always unhinged, always this. I thought he had perfect temperament yesterday. And all of the promises a president has made and kept in 30 days is pretty spectacular. And more importantly, every other promise, he's laid the foundation to fix them too and keep his word to the American people. Some of them I'll put up on the screen here. They're not out there telling the story that a president made these promises or is keeping these promises. I actually think that is a big news story.
It is a great news story. And what we are seeing is what I have described in the acronym SIN. They're not only shifting the subject, it's super shifting. They're trying to get so far away from the facts that people don't know the facts if they watch those sources. Ignoring the facts. They are ignoring the facts relative to what President Trump and this administration have accomplished. That's what's going on, Sean.
And you know
they're
what?
Destroying themselves.
We need to fix the country. We need to be safe and secure. Americans need jobs to get out of poverty, off of food stamps, and we've got to secure the borders, not let radical Islamists in the country. He kept his promise on the Supreme Court. Pretty profound. All right, Herman, good to see you. Thank you. And up next tonight on this busy news night on Hannity.
We're issuing a new executive action next week that will comprehensively protect our country.
The president says he will, in fact, sign a new executive action related to the temporary travel ban early next week. Jay Sekulow weighs in on the legal aspects of this, also the Espionage Act, and also tonight.
So if I come back in 200 days
You're gonna go, well, I made a promise, we got it.
Well,
because I think this is important.
So here's what I'm saying. We've met this out for 200 days. We have a plan to do that. We're on schedule.
So yesterday in Washington, I went to interview the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. I asked him about the president, his agenda. We're starting a new segment tonight, holding them accountable. We'll tell you all about it straight ahead.
We've taken decisive action to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of our country. Though parts of our necessary and constitutional actions were blocked by a judge's, in my opinion, incorrect and unsafe ruling, our administration is working night and day to keep you safe, including reporters safe, and is vigorously defending this lawful order. We're issuing a new executive action next week that will comprehensively protect our country. So we'll be going along the one path and hopefully winning that. At the same time, we will be issuing a new and very comprehensive order to protect our people.
All right, the president announcing yesterday he will sign a new executive action on immigration early next week. So what can be worded differently so liberals and the courts cannot stop it? Joining us now from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow. All right, a lightning round quick just to get facts on the table.
Yep.
The big story, you agree with me, is that the intelligence community has been politicized, at least among some, and what they did in leaking this information was illegal, correct?
Absolutely illegal, and almost becomes a soft coup in a sense because of the leaks that have taken place, which violate federal law, a felony.
Okay, and that would be the Espionage Act 18, U.S. Code 793.
Correct. That's the
felony.
unauthorized dissemination of information.
Okay. The other thing is, so we know that our intelligence agencies, they were doing their job, and they were monitoring a Russian ambassador.
Right.
There is law and protocol. I want you to go into more detail here.
Yep.
Where when they discover that an American is being spoken to with the person that they've targeted for surveillance, that if they don't have a warrant, they are supposed to stop recording, minimize what they hear from the American citizen. In this case, it would be General Flynn. So that makes it illegal.
He was a private citizen at the time.
Explain.
Right. So it's called minimization. It's a requirement under the law. When you find out that there's an American, you don't have a wiretap, exactly what you said, you basically shut it off for their portion of the conversation. But, Sean, there was a sea change here in the NSA with an order that came out from President Obama 17 days before he left office, where he allowed the NSA, who used to control the data, it now goes to 16 other agencies, and that just festered this whole leaking situation. And that happened on the way out, as the president was leaving the office of the...
No, because this is important. I want you to stay on this.
Yep.
Let me put up the New York Times. This is from January 12th, discussing this very thing that you said. In its final days, the Obama administration expanded the power of the National Security Agency to share globally intercepted personal communications with the government's 16 other agencies, intelligence agencies, before applying privacy protections. Let's explain the severity of this. This means that information that most people would never see is now spread all throughout the entire intelligence community. Explain the significance of that.
The first question I ask is, why did the Obama administration wait till they had 17 days left in their administration to put this order in place? If they thought it was so important, they had it 8 years, they didn't do it. That's number one. Number two, it changed the existing rules, which was an executive order dating back to Ronald Reagan that has been in place until 17 days before the Obama administration was going to end, that said the NSA gets the raw data and they determine dissemination. Instead, this change that the president put in place, signed off, by the way, by James Clapper on December 15th, 2016, signed off by Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, January 3rd, 2017. They decide that now, all of a sudden, 16 agencies can get the raw data. And what that does is it almost creates a shadow government. You have all these people that are not agreeing with the president, President Trump's position, so it just festers more leaks.
Do you agree with
if they had a justification for this, wonderful. Why didn't they do it 8 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago? They wait till 17 days left.
So, in other words, it makes it that much more difficult by spreading out the information among 16 other agencies if they want to target or take away the privacy rights and illegally tap the phones, in this case of General Flynn. It's going to be much harder to find the perpetrators. Is that Is that a good analysis?
Yes, because what it's done is it's increased 16-fold the number of people that would have access to the communications. Initially, it was just the NSA. There's a very small amount of people that would have had access to this kind of data. But this change administratively by the Obama administration was so significant that they allowed the dissemination to 16 other agencies of raw data. And, Sean, we wonder why there's leaks. But I'll tell you something. President Obama, James Clapper, Loretta Lynch should be held accountable for this.
Do you think
it's not illegal what they did,
was
but the way they did it,
was designed
I'd like to know why.
For the purpose of allowing their spies to do the very thing we see happening?
Yeah, well, their justification will be it will help in intelligence gathering. But like I said, really, 8 years into your administration, you decide to do that?
Yeah.
17 days
Not
to
credible.
go? That needs to be answered. And I'll be very curious to see what they say.
All right, the president's going to issue a new executive order next week as it relates to extreme vetting. You actually have written your own version, if you will, that you feel that would withstand the constitutionality and even get an 8-0 vote if it goes from the Ninth Circuit to the Supreme Court. I'm putting up on the side of the screen the changes you suggested. Explain why they need to be put in place and specifically why you think you could get an 8-0 Supreme Court unanimous decision if, in fact, you got there.
So the one area where the Ninth Circuit went after the administration, by the way, I think the order was constitutional. I think the Ninth Circuit was wrong. But I like cases tight. So if I'm going to take a case up that ultimately goes to the Supreme Court of the United States, I want the best facts I can. So where the White House put clearly in a White House memorandum that green card holders, visa holders would not be subject to this extreme vetting order, to the executive order, that came through the White House counsel's office. So the Ninth Circuit said, well, that's not the same as coming through an agency. It's not binding. So what we said was, put a definitive in the order itself, put the definitive language, which is right out of what the Ninth Circuit said the so-called problem was, then put a specific date so there's no question when it comes into effect. And the president has this authority, of course, you know, as we've talked about many times. The Ninth Circuit didn't even bother to cite the law here, 1832F. They didn't even bother to, they ignored it completely.
1182.
The fact is, at the end of the day here, I think this becomes bulletproof. By the way, Sean, I don't know what the Ninth Circuit will do. They may rule against it because that's where they are politically.
Well, 80%
but I think that's the
rate
case
of
they take to the
overturn is
Supreme
pretty
Court of the
high.
United States.
I mean, that's by any standard. Jay, great stuff. Thank you for explaining it. This is really important because you get to a police state if they don't get a warrant and they can use surveillance and then leak it and destroy the lives of innocent Americans. Doesn't matter whether you're conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. That is a huge problem for the country. And up next tonight, right here on Hannity. So if I come back in 200 days, you're gonna go, well, I made a promise. We got it. Well, because I think this is important.
So here's what I'm saying. We've mapped this out for 200 days. We have a plan to do that. We're on schedule.
All right, yesterday I went to Washington, D.C. I had an opportunity to interview the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. I asked him multiple times if Republican lawmakers will work to enact President Trump's agenda. And a new segment we're starting, Holding Them Accountable. We'll begin that coming up next and also tonight.
When you couple a radical Islamic regime that says death to America with the weapons of mass death, then you have a much, much bigger problem.
Also yesterday, while in Washington, D.C., I had the chance to interview Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We spoke about the Iranian threat, radical Islam, and so much more. Stay with us. Welcome back to Hannity. So tonight, we are debuting a brand new segment. We'll do this regularly. We're calling it Holding Republicans and Washington Accountable. Now, yesterday, I traveled to Washington to interview the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, about how he plans to enact President Trump's agenda. Watch this. Are you telling the American people that that agenda, that litany, I'll go through vetting refugees, building the wall, repeal, replace, education back to the states, tax reform, all of this is going to be done in 200 days.
The education part may be a little later because we're waiting for Betsy DeVos to put together her plan. So on the education thing and the welfare reform, that's going to be outside of the 200-day window. Inside the 200-day window is the regulatory reforms we talked about. It's the repeal and replace Obamacare. It's the budget. It's the rebuilding of our military. It's tax reform. Those are the things that we're working on, and infrastructure. Those are the things we're working on in this 2017 calendar.
In the equation? Because I think
that's in there as well. I should have said that. We see that as part of regulatory reform.
So in 200 days, you're fairly confident that a budget is going to be passed. I'm going to get to the specifics. Two budgets, which has never happened. That the wall is in the process of being constructed.
Yeah.
We're going to be working on fixing the VA. that Congress will support extreme vetting and that they'll move forward with energy independence.
Yeah, so
Obamacare repeal and replace.
He can do the extreme vetting on his own. So this is the good thing is you have a president that agrees with Congress on doing the extreme vetting.
But in 200 days, you think that's doable?
This is our plan, yeah. And if there's any slippage, we'll finish it in the fall and get it done before the end of the year.
So if I come back in 200 days, you're gonna go, well, I made a promise, we got it done.
Well,
because I think this is important.
So here's what I'm saying. We've mapped this out for 200 days. We have a plan to do that. We're on schedule. But if anything slips because of another Supreme Court justice, or a filibuster on a cabinet nominee, that might slip us, but we're making sure that we do all of this in 2017. And we have cushion in our schedule. If anything slips because it's really because of Senate issues, we still have time to accommodate all of this stuff in 2017. So I even have safety valves. I have cushions built in the schedule to make sure this all gets done in 2017.
Because I believe
in case something happens and goes sideways on the Senate.
I'm pretty sure that'll stimulate the economy, get people back to work, and get the economy moving again, which I think we need.
That's what we're hired to do.
All right, Mr. Speaker, we'll see you in 200 days. All right, here with reaction, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, the author of this incredible new book, love it, The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again, Todd Starnes, and Washington Times columnist Madison Jessidiano is with us. Good for your debut. Congratulations.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right, you were also the press secretary for the Trump inauguration at a regional level, right?
Yes, I was the regional press secretary for half of the country.
I got the speaker. I was actually very happy because I've been very critical of the Republicans not moving fast enough. He said he totally supports the agenda, and he'll get it done in 200 days. Is that, and by the way, in fairness to him, a lot of what he's trying to do is difficult.
Absolutely. What I really loved with your interview with him yesterday is that it seems like finally he's 100% behind our president. And I know President Trump has worked to keep the promises he made on the campaign trail at an unprecedented rate. And it's great to see Congress is doing their best now to keep up, and the Republican leadership is really working for the American people, which is something I think they should have been doing much earlier than this. We need to be accomplishing things faster.
Todd, this is the opportunity. You don't get this very often to get the job done. What was your takeaway from the promise to support the agenda and legislatively pass it?
Well, Sean, I think all of us gun-toting, Bible-clinging, deplorable Americans are cautiously optimistic that the Republicans are going to do that. And the reason I say cautiously optimistic is the Republicans have a bad habit of campaigning as conservatives, but when they finally gain control, they gain power, they go a little wobbly. So I'm glad you're holding their feet to the fire here, and I do believe that Paul Ryan is going to be a helper and a friend to President Trump.
Lisa, I've been very critical of Republicans. I say they're spineless, they're visionless. I was so frustrated that they never actually used their enumerated power of the purse to battle Obama. I walked away feeling a lot more optimistic after interviewing the speaker yesterday. Am I being naive, or did you feel the same thing?
No, I don't think you're being naive, Sean. I mean, as you outlined in the interview, look, there are some big ticket items that are up ahead, things that this country desperately needs, whether it's VA reform, whether it's Obamacare repeal and replacement, or, things like, just getting a lot of the deregulation, a lot of these various things that we need, tax reform. All this stuff needs to get done. So I think it's important to hold Speaker Ryan's feet to the fire. But obviously, he's got only control in the House, right?
So you've also got... I don't mean, at least I'm sorry. We have a time crunch. I want to make sure I get this in. I'll start with you, Lisa. Do they do it? In 200 days, do you predict it'll be done, most of it, the legislative side?
I don't know about in 200 days, but yes, and I think it's holding Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and also President Trump as well, because it's really going to take everyone to move these things forward.
Todd, what do you say?
Sean, as I wrote in the Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again, it's going to be the American people who have to rise up and make sure, hold their elected leadership in Congress accountable.
That's what we're trying to do in this segment. Madison?
I would love to see it happen in 10 days, but I'm very concerned about the fact that we have a lot of Democrats and people in the mainstream media who are putting their political and personal interests ahead of the interests of the American people. And so I hope that we can get this accomplished in 200 days.
Here's my fear. My fear is that there are going to be Republicans in marginal districts or maybe districts that Hillary won, and they're going to be a lot tougher to bring on board. It may be harder than we think, but we will hold them accountable, and we'll have this segment on a regular basis. Guys, good to see you all. Thank you for being with us. And up next tonight on Hannity.
When you couple a radical Islamic regime that says death to America with the weapons of mass death, then you have a much, much bigger problem.
Yesterday, while in Washington, I also interviewed the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, we spoke about the rogue regime in Tehran, radical Islam, much more. Also, we'll check in with Lou Dobbs tonight. He is here, and many, many more news stories to come on this busy Friday night edition. You agree with me, radical Islam is the evil in our time.
Yes, sir.
And Iran represents the biggest threat.
Because it would couple a radical Islamic regime with nuclear weapons.
That can't happen.
There could be evil that is not threatening because it doesn't have the powers of mass murder. But when you couple a radical Islamic regime that says death to America with the weapons of mass death, then you have a much, much bigger problem.
A squared, B squared, C squared. Radical Islamic terrorists, weapons of mass destruction equals a modern-day Holocaust?
It's up to us to prevent it.
All right, that was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on this program last night, talking about the threat posed by a nuclear Iran. Joining us now with the reaction, author of Besiege, retired Brigadier General Tony Tata, former spokesperson for the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Fox News contributor Rick Grinnell. Rick, I think it's pretty clear, but he stood on the stage for so long as a voice in the wilderness. Now he has a partner. What changes now?
All of the allies that we have in the region are desperate to have U.S. leadership. So when Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu get together and they lay out a plan for pushing back and isolating Iran, there's a lot of cheers from the Middle East leaders. We have seen not just terror cells from the Iranians, but literally a strategy for Iran to place competing military forces in places like Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon. They are not going to stop. They want it in Turkey. And what the Middle East and Arab leaders are now standing up and seeing is that the United States is saying, we are going to once again push back the Iranians and isolate them. There are a lot of cheers coming up from the Middle East on that.
Yeah, and let me play for you a moment about this new coalition, General, where I ask him, are the Saudis, the Egyptians, or Jordanians joining forces with Israel? Let me play this cut for you. I'm reading the tea leaves, and what I'm hearing from you is that there is an alliance that perhaps is emerging that maybe nobody ever anticipated before, that goes way beyond a one or two state solution, and that which would fit into the not only against Iran but also the Palestinian issues.
I'm trying to throw a very cunning journalist off track. So.
Is that what?
But look,
I'm looking for hope.
I think there's a lot of hope. I think there's hope first in their resolve to resist these terrorists, these brutes, and second in the understanding that we can forge new relationships that we've never had before.
General, did you pick up what I picked up during that press conference, this emerging alliance, something much bigger than people are even have conceived of before?
I think so, Sean, and I think your conversation with the Prime Minister contributed to that whole discussion to further it along. That's how important I think that was. What he's really talking about and what you're talking about is stopping Iranian hegemony in that region. You got to remember, they're supporting Hamas, they're supporting Hezbollah, the Sunni and Shia Arabic members of the transnational terrorist group that is trying to wipe Israel off the face of the map. So they want to get rid of Iranian hegemony. They see Iran in Iraq halfway up, all the way up to Mosul. That's not to fight ISIS. That's to create more breathing room.
Could we take out those sites? Let's say if all that alliance comes together, the Brits also join in, and I'm short on time. General, we'll start with you. Can we take out those nuclear sites without boots on the ground?
We could. It's better to have boots on the ground. Some of our secret folks on the ground with lasers that can do that. But yes, absolutely, we could.
And you agree with that, Rick?
Look, I think that we need to have boots on the ground because you get timely intelligence. What we've seen inside Syria
but not a lot of boots,
is that it just doesn't. No, enough for intelligence. We need timely intelligence, and that's all we need.
All right, guys, good to see you both. Appreciate it. That's an important discussion. When we come back, we have this straight ahead on Hannity.
We're becoming a drug-infested nation. Drugs are becoming cheaper than candy bars, and we're not going to let it happen any longer.
The president taking measures to crack down on drugs pouring into the country. We'll get reaction tonight from Lou Dobbs. That and more straight ahead.
becoming a drug-infested nation. Drugs are becoming cheaper than candy bars, and we're not going to let it happen any longer. We've undertaken the most substantial border security measures in a generation to keep our nation and our tax dollars safe, and are now in the process of beginning to build a promised wall on the southern border. We've ordered a crackdown on sanctuary cities that refuse to comply with federal law and that harbor criminal aliens, and we've ordered an end to the policy of catch and release on the border. No more release. No matter who you are, release. We've begun a nationwide effort to remove criminal aliens, gang members, drug dealers, and others who pose a threat to public safety. We are saving American lives every single day.
All right, that was President Trump yesterday explaining how he is keeping his promise when it comes to illegal immigration and that crisis. Here with reaction from the Fox Business Network. Our sister network is our friend Lou Dobbs. How are you? You know, I'm reading all these stories, and it's funny because the media, this false story that came out today, they're sending in the National Guard, rounding up,
The largest wire service pushing this kind of nonsense, knocked down by the Department of Defense, the White House, and everyone else. Not a source in it, and the Associated Press is pushing pure nonsense. And as you know, the worst thing about it is AP feeds every news outlet in the country, and now you look at any website, you look at
everywhere.
It is everywhere, and there is you
don't pull that back. No. They're not going to. It's sort of like you've had bad articles written, one or two, Lou, over the years. You have a bad article written about you, and then say they get a fact wrong, you demand a retraction. It's front page for the bad story, 828, lower paragraph, hidden away, correction, if they get it to you.
But Sean, the impulse for these organizations to do this is what is so deeply troubling. This is a left-wing offensive being carried out in the left-wing media. And there's no accident. This is without a shred of a doubt, absolutely purposeful and directed at this president.
And look at the thing is, I'm watching these 30 days, reading these columns. Oh, what a disastrous 30 days. His list of accomplishments, I put him up all night. It's amazing. The wall, he's building it. Right. The vetting, it's getting done. Sanctuary cities, catch and release, it's all coming to an end.
Creating jobs, moving the economy ahead. And by the way, did anybody notice? Without any other, no ambiguity at all. $2.8 trillion more in our stock market as a result of his election on November 8th.
See, Lou has a lot of money in the stock market. That's why Lou's following that closely. No, I'm teasing you.
But it's also
all your years in business.
It's also a great barometer on our future and what people are expecting, and that is a real vote, without question.
So this week, the New York Times, Monday, they had to reprimand the reporter for the horrible comment about Melania. Then they quoted a fake Michael Flynn Twitter account. They had to retract that. And then they thought it would be in good taste to feature a photo of Stephen Miller's severed head on a stake.
Is that not something?
That's the New York Times alone. That's just one news organization.
The banality, the crassness, the mendacity of it all. It's ugly. It is. I have never seen anything approaching it in mainstream media.
And I don't think it's going away. That's a sad thing. It's not going away. It won't.
There has to be a response by the Republican Party and the Republican leaders. This cannot stand because this is just not who we are, and it's certainly not what we should tolerate.
Lou, good to see you again. Thank you.
Great to be with you, Sean. Thank you.
All right, when we come back, a very important question of the day, and you've been sending us messages, the Hannity hotline. Some of them aren't so nice. We'll play that coming up next. All right, time for our question of the day. What did you think of the alt-left propaganda media's coverage of the president's press conference? He's unhinged. He's out of... He was measured, presidential, and he just called them out for who they are with a sense of humor, and also listed his accomplishments, which they'll never do. Go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, at Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. All right, time to play some messages you left for me on the Hannity hotline. Uh-oh, I'm bracing. Go.
I used to be a Democrat. You know, I've been watching the way this country's been going for many, many, many years. And a lot of us Democrats, including a lot of union members I'm friends with, are sick and tired of it.
Love your show at night. Just wanted to tell you that I thought your opening remarks kicking the butts of the Republican Congress were wonderful the other night.
President Trump needs the extreme vetting for the people working for him in Washington, especially the ones who are left over from the Obama time.
Have something to say to me? It doesn't have to be nice. Maybe a comment. Even if it's mean, we'll probably play it. Call the number on your screen, 877-225-8587. All you haters out there, go ahead, come on, let me have it. Feel free. I'm not afraid. That's all the time we have left. As always, thank you for being with us. We hope you have a great night, a great weekend. We'll see you back here Monday.